discussion of voting the board members for the Alleghany Memorial Hospital, and I'll turn it over to Commissioner Cox.
Thank you. I requested this time tonight to see if we might generate some discussion among the board. We've heard from folks in the audience, we've heard from the forum or the gathering at the courthouse, and it was well attended, and you know, we've received a lot of folks there. We saw a lot of folks there who expressed support and gave testimonials, heartfelt, and you know, I would be one of those too. But and all the commissioners were there, so we were able to observe and listen. People keep coming and talking to me, as I assume they are others here on the board, and expressing opinions. And I usually try to talk to them about, well, you know, I don't hear anybody saying we want the hospital to fail. I don't hear anybody saying that folks are not doing their best, they're doing a hard job and taking care of people as they should, and maybe sometimes above and beyond. But there's a lot of expression out there of concern about taxes, and I share that concern. I certainly don't want to see the hospital leave. We need our hospital. I put down some thoughts, and if you'll bear with me, I'll read those thoughts. I hope I don't open up too much of a can of worms, but maybe we can have some discussion about this vital issue in our community. So if you'll bear with me, I just sat down and spent some time thinking about some of the things even that I heard tonight. The meeting, of course, was well attended, as I said, and it's clear that many in our community are genuinely concerned about the possibility of losing AMH and what we can do to save it. There are many heartfelt testimonials, but in my opinion, there continues to be more questions than there are answers at this point, and I think we'll get to the answers. I bring this up because many people are making assumptions about what the Board of Commissioners is going to do, and everybody has their own assumption, and they assume that we're going to do this, we're going to do that, and I will tell you that I don't know what we're going to do, because this is something I think about all the time. I don't know if we're going to do anything, but making decisions such as these when there are so many worthy needs in the county is a process that takes time and serious deliberation, and I hope that's where we'll go with this, because the request will be part of the budget request, and it should give us a little more time to be deliberative about it. There are other issues. There are other needs in our county, with starting with the New River problem, and you know, our schools and health care with the health department, and insurance for employees, and all these. There are many. There's a whole trove, not treasure trove, but there's a whole trove of issues, certainly. So I know that this board, I've been on it a year now, and I know they are deliberative, and they'll do the best they can if we need to do something. But I feel that I know that there's a need for more information and more transparency in the issue. I feel a need to know what measures the hospital has considered and taken to reduce the flow of red ink. Specifically, what cuts have been implemented at the hospital to try to balance the budget. How many positions have been eliminated or reduced? How much savings have these actions brought about? The issue of salaries has gotten out there in the public consciousness, and I think it's fair to ask, has there been any serious considerations of reductions in salaries to help bring the books into balance? It's fair to ask the question. I don't know the answer. It is true that the hospital is not a traditional business. We heard that at the meeting the other night. It's true. They are obligated to treat whomever shows up, whether they can pay or not. But there are other examples in our community too, you know, of that type of situation. The public school system is not a true business either, and they have to serve all comers also. But they still have to balance the books so they can operate in the black. County government is another example. We're not a true business, but the books have to be balanced. So the hospital gave some examples of cost-saving measures. CAP was transferred to the health department, but that was done as part of, as I understand it, as part of becoming a critical access hospital. It wasn't necessarily a cost-saving measure. It was done in order to gain another certification. OB was discontinued because of the excessive cost of malpractice insurance. I could be wrong in that, but that's what I've got given to understand. So there's no future savings for these measures because they've already been done. The hospital has applied for funds from the Golden Leaf Foundation. If they get the funds from Golden Leaf, do they still need taxpayer dollars? And how long will they stay open without the funds? Just a question. For me, the shadow of New River, having gone on that board right before things came to a head, hangs over this whole situation. In that case, a large part of their problems came from a board that allowed the CEO, CFO, and management team to operate at will without adequate demands or accountability. You know, the CEO was required by the 160A agreement to make reports to the county commissioners, and that didn't occur. Management was not held accountable by the board, nor were they held accountable by the boards of commissioners of the 5 counties. So I say that because of accountability. AMH states that in order to be viable, there is a need for funds from the people of Alleghany County. If that's the case, and public funds are indeed appropriated, and that's a big if, then it's my belief that with the appropriation of people's funds must go some serious strings. Transparency and accountability are paramount. Would there be representatives from the commissioners on the board? Would there be periodic and detailed reports of fiscal health by AMH? Members of the board have stated they did not want to merge with another hospital because they were afraid they would lose control. However, local control, as the current hospital board knows, it will change if taxpayer funds are allocated. But as I said when I started, there are 3 things that are just not open to debate as far as I'm concerned. We care about our friends and neighbors who work at the hospital. We don't want to see them unemployed. The employees at the hospital are dedicated, they're caring, they're hardworking people. They truly care about their patients and they go above and beyond. No one I know really wants to see the hospital fail, so that's kind of the floor at which I am. So the question then becomes, how do we pull together as a community to work this out? And let's keep talking about it. And I want to open this up to my fellow commissioners and see if they have any comments or words of wisdom. Thank you for letting me have time.
Well, you know, I was tickled that all 5 of us were at the forum, and I came away and had people ask me the next day, what did I get out of that particular forum? I was genuinely impressed with the support that was offered, but at the same time, I came away thinking changes had to be made and confidence had been lost. I think those are 3 things that we as a board must consider, is the necessity to keep the hospital. Our county uses the medical community as one of our economic drivers. It's very critical to attracting people in industry and jobs to Alleghany County. We chose not to have an interstate. We chose not to have a dam. We chose not to have an airport. We made a lot of tough choices. I cannot imagine this county being without a hospital. But that doesn't mean that there is an open door or an open checkbook. There must be discussion as you've outlined, and I think that's going to happen. I think it will be healthy discussion among the commissioners. The county manager has been working actively trying to help them give some ideas. I think the forum was a big step forward, and I'm anxious to move that process forward. They have hired a new CEO. I believe I saw in the newspaper that they had made that decision to hire this particular gentleman, and I look forward to hearing what he has to say. But I think Commissioner Cox, you have started the ball rolling, and I think it's going to be up to us. I do not see us playing a major role, but I see us playing a role in being able to keep the hospital moving. as all of you know, we as a board is constituted, we cannot commit a future board to any funding other than this upcoming 12-13 budget year. We can't go out and extend or make a promise or sign a contract that says it will fund the hospital from here forward. We only can look at 1 year at a time. And that's probably a good thing, so that each board has that responsibility to review what is necessary before they appropriate any future money. And I'll stop right there and see if Commissioner Smith, Commissioner Goodrow, or Commissioner Roach have any other comments.
Mr. Chairman, I do know that there were a lot of questions asked about the hospital, and I would agree. I don't know from the forum. I was at the forum. I'm thinking that we're probably at a place that we need, as Mr. Cox said, we all want to see, nobody wants to see the hospital fail. But now we're to where that emotion can kind of be behind us maybe, and start seeing just what it's going to take to succeed, or what kind of facility are we going to be able to offer that our citizens are willing to support. There were many questions out there. There were a list of questions I know that were compiled partly from public comment here. I've got questions. I've got 4 sheets of questions, and I'm not so sure it wouldn't be a bad idea to try and get some of these questions one paper sent and expect some answers back on paper. If that would answer. I don't know which, that's my thoughts on it, but there's a lot of questions that I think should be answered before we move.
Well, I'd be supportive of that, and that way the answers then will be in the public realm too.
Would you be agreeable, Commissioner Smith, to turn these questions to the county manager, or would you want us to set up a workshop with our board versus someone from the hospital to go over these questions?
I would be agreeable to either one of those that get around.
And I would agree. I mean, we certainly have a lot of questions. The public had numerous questions. Really at this point have not been addressed by the staff at the hospital or management or quorum. And hopefully with the new CEO, some of these responses will start coming up. Like everyone up here, no one wants to see that hospital go away. We all understand that. We're going to try everything we can to make sure that the hospital succeeds. But we have, you have to understand just pouring money into it is not going to, make you succeed. Really, it's going to take a whole new business plan. And I understand their argument. They say they're not a business, but by God, you got to balance the books, and you got to look at your expense and your, your revenue coming in, and they need to match. So that is a business, and I would be all for submitting questions, and whether we do it in a workshop type form or might be a little better, because the way it's looking, we probably got to push them a little bit. And the hospital needs to be transparent and open and respond to the people. They're asking for all of your money. They need to respond.
Don, do you think that if each of us submitted questions and then you made arrangements with whoever at the hospital for us to set up a workshop for us?
Yeah, I just sort of following up to make sure I understand, because so are we talking about each individual commissioner? Have you set a timeline to submit questions to, say, me or Karen? Really, Karen can organize them. And then you're talking about actually setting a workshop up with whoever the hospital needs, board.
Leave it up to them.
Leave it up to them. How would you like to go through? The only question I'd have is, would you like a process in which you actually go through your list of questions first, meaning as a board, or is this sort of just accumulation of just the entire board's set of questions?
Talking about prioritizing.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my question is do you wish to have a conversation amongst yourselves before you sit down and discuss those questions before you sit down with the hospital? Or would you rather?
Take Commissioner Goodrow, for example. If he had 10 questions and I had 10 questions and you saw that 2 of them were duplicates, then that would be compiled into a question.
And I completely agree with it, with the exception of I would want you, before I remove your question or Mr. Goodrow's question, what I seem to think is the same question, you may not think is the same question. So my point being is before I start removing or combining anything, my preference would be to have a final sort of okay from this board. Does that make sense, Commissioner? I'm not gonna remove a question that's submitted to me by a commissioner unless that commissioner says, yeah, I believe that's close enough to Ken's, let's just combine the two.
Would each of y'all be agreeable to meet with the county manager individually with 10 minutes, 15 minutes with your list and make sure he understands what your questions are?
Either that, Ken, or you submit them to me, we organize them, then I meet with you. Because I just,
That makes sense.
okay, all I wanna do is before I start removing somebody's question, I just wanna make sure it's okay for me to remove the question. That's the whole point. All right, so do you wanna set up the timeline?
Yeah, let's do this as soon, let's do this as soon as we possibly can. You think, is it agreeable to everybody would have them in by Friday of this week?
Absolutely.
And then we can start, make time to meet with Don and go over those questions, and then he in turn can set up a workshop or work up a time for us to meet.
I have a question about the workshop. It'd be an open
It almost has to,
session,
Oh, yes.
and minutes will be kept.
yeah.
But let's go ahead and throw this out on the table then too, while we're having these discussions. Just for everybody understanding, you know, workshops are workshops, you know, unless I'm instructed to have public comments and things of that nature. How are y'all wanting this to be a workshop where you're interacting directly with the library board? You're not making decisions. You wouldn't be making a decision until you actually pass a budget after public hearings and things of that nature. But what I'm trying to do is distinguish between, you know, a workshop with the hospital, which is open to the public, everybody can attend, in which the interaction really is gonna be between the hospital and the commissioners versus an open forum. Those are two different things. Does everybody agree with that or comfortable with that analogy? Or you tell me if I'm wrong. I mean,
I think we need to have a conversation with the board.
because I just want to make sure that the public
Just me.
understands or expects, you know, they're definitely welcome to come to the workshop, but to understand it's not necessarily an interactive workshop. It's between the public and the board. John, you know, Commissioner Goodrow, I'm looking, are you comfortable with that? I mean, now, that's not to say that this board doesn't take input from the public, but that's why you have public comment sections front of every regularly scheduled meeting, and that's why people can get on the agenda for every meeting and things of that nature. Again, I wanna make sure that that's clear. I keep repeating myself, but if we don't set it up right, it'll end up as people expecting it to be a public hearing on the hospital, when the reality is you're trying to set up a meeting that you can appropriately communicate your wishes to the hospital board.
Correct.
Well, I'd like for these questions to be, public documents as well. So, just as long as there's a method of that.
What I'll do is, if the public will give me time, they'll be, obviously it's coming to my office by Friday. If they'll give Karen and myself time by Monday or something, by the end of the day, Monday, may have a consolidated version of everything that we can make public to everybody. Maybe Tuesday morning. We'll try to be conscious of the paper, and the paper wishes to get your questions out in the public and also to the general public.
Okay.
And I think the forum was a good start, but I hope it's not the last. You know, because there's still a lot of questions that folks would like to ask. And they've even felt like were submitted, but were not addressed.
So each of us will make an effort to get the questions to you by this Friday. And then each of us will make an effort to spend 5 or 10 minutes going over those questions with you. And you in turn will get with the appropriate hospital authority. And then we'll start trying to schedule a workshop, probably in the evening. And as soon as we can, as soon as possible, I think.
I mean, if you want to, we can go ahead and schedule. It's easier, the reason I push these dates, because it's much easier for me to have a conversation with all 5 of you sitting here than to sit on the phone and call you for, I mean, that's, if we want to schedule that in 2 weeks from now or whatnot, let's go ahead and do it.
Sometime in the middle week of May.
Fourteenth, 18th, 19th, are all.
16th, 18th.
14th, that Monday would work.
Is that not a meeting?
No, it's on the 14th.
Okay.
All right, if you want to shoot for the evening of the 14th, 6:30.
Are they ready?
Call that.
Planning board,
Planning board.
Board of Education too.
Board of Education. Okay.
if you just give me a couple of days, you know, because what we can do is immediately tomorrow, just call them and I'm just trying to avoid, I apologize, but it does take a couple of hours to sit, or an hour to sit and call y'all, and we don't get you, and we do get you, if we can get a day or two while we're all sitting here.
And we want to stay away because the planning board's meeting in here, but we don't have to meet here. Can we not meet at the hospital? I mean,
Assuming that, that's the only reason if you wanted to shoot for the 14th or and the 21st or the 14th and the 22nd, then I can call them up and, because I don't know if the solarium's open on the 14th. It's only,
yeah.
Let's look at that middle week sometime, 14th, 15th, 17th.
is there a date, let me ask this, is there a date of the week of the 14th that somebody can't do it as of?
The 15th is really tough for me.
And I've got a meeting on the 15th. Any other day is fine with me.
If that's the case, and then preferable time, 6:30?
Yeah.
Okay. Then what we'll do is, we'll try to we'll immediately get on this tomorrow, call the hospital and go ahead and start trying to get that scheduled.
Thank you.
Mr. Cox, anything?
No, sir. Thank you.
We need to have a closed session under General Statute 143-318.11, A3 legal, A4 economic development. I need a motion to do that.
So moved.
A motion? Second. Second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.